Welcome to the Nourish You Podcast, where we question the traditional model of dieting and nutrition and focus on choice, fun, and health for the whole mind, body, and spirit. I'm Jana Maurer, a non-traditional registered dietitian and well-being expert, and I want to challenge you to take 2% of your day today, listen to this episode, and make this your health win for the day. Pop in your earbuds, strap on your walking shoes, or pour a big glass of wine, whatever you need for today, and tune out the world as much as you can for the next 30 minutes, and let's fill up your cup. Okay, everyone, welcome back to the Nourish You Podcast. Today, I'm so excited to have my guest, Michelle. I believe she's been on the podcast before, and I've been on her podcast. So this is super, super fun. Michelle and I are just going to talk about a lot of different things. So hold in there. We are going to explore a lot of different areas. But Michelle, thank you so much for joining again.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I love talking to you, Jana. Yes, everyone buckle up. We're two-man gens over here. So but I like to think it's relevant. It's important what we have to say. But no, thank you so much for having me back. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So tell individuals that are tuning in just a little bit about yourself, Michelle.
Sure. So I'm Michelle. I'm a registered dietitian professionally. I like to call myself the soul-led RD because I'm also a spiritual and self-connection coach, if you will. So I love to help women not only nourish themselves in mind, body, and soul, but also connect with their soul and their true selves. I'm over on Instagram at Michelle_Caravella. So come say hi.
Yeah. And just to do a little plug for you. So Michelle was one of my coaches when she ran her Connected and Courageous group and really helped explore new ways to be connected to myself and others and to be courageous in doing so. So definitely go check her out on Instagram. And I just love everything that you do, Michelle, because I think it does. I know that it connects to that higher purpose behind what we are doing in this lifetime. So you said soul-led RD. How did that come about for you?
Yes. Well, thank you, by the way. So I think, and I know this is kind of what we wanted to actually talk about today. I feel like the soul-led RD came about when, obviously for me, everything started with nutrition. I love the idea of, from a young age when I discovered it in high school, like empowering yourself through things that you could do every day, which is eat and take good care of yourself. And, of course, there's more to that. But I also really was into the same type of empowerment with spirituality, your thoughts, your energy, things like that. And then, of course, as a dietitian, you and I both know there's a lot of science, there's food, there's all of this stuff. However, we also know it's not just about the food. It's never just about the food. When you actually sit down with a human being, it's much more than the food. So as I evolved, I think as a practitioner and in my career, I kept kind of seeing this theme of, especially working with a lot of disordered eating and eating disorders. And a lot of people have disordered eating. I'm sure you see that too. There was just this obvious, other piece to it all, which I think is the spiritual, the inner being, the connection to self, that kind of led me to branch out a little bit. And yeah, I kind of not only started doing things like Connected and Courageous, which has nothing to do with food, but was also starting to lean into that side and integrate it into the nutrition counseling, if you will. And my own journey started to, be more forthcoming with my connection to self and soul. And I kind of just embodied that and embraced that. And that, I think that title for me was just like a way to own it a little bit more and also kind of show people if you don't want to talk about beyond the food or beyond just nourishing your body physically, then I'm probably not the right fit for you because we're going to talk about soul nourishment and things like that. Because that's healing towards our journey. Even if you're like, oh, I'm not a spiritual person, I think in order to find peace with food, which I would assume almost all of us would want, we can't not talk about the soul. That's what I've come to find time and time again. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes. And so I will put a little heads up there. Michelle's known to make me cry. So just give everyone a heads up on this topic, because I think that it's such, like you said, it's such healing work. And it's what I would say the majority of us are looking for in our health journey, right? I'm not going to say weight loss journey, just our health journey is, I've heard so many women say, like, I don't even know what it means to take care of myself, or no one taught me how to practice self-care, or I feel selfish if I'm doing something for myself. And these are all statements that have nothing to do with food or a meal plan. And
Mhm,
so when and we've been trained, I mean, Michelle and I were talking about this before we started recording. From my perspective, I believe that most of us women have been trained to go to weight loss when there is something like, and I'm air quoting, wrong with us. Whether we
mhm,
feel like discontentment, whether we feel grief, whether we don't feel happy, whether there's sadness, right? Like all these other emotions that go into it. And we have been given the blanket like solution of, well, just lose 5 more pounds, you'll feel fine. And that
mhm,
gets us into, well, one, it never addresses the real issue. And two, it gets us into where you are not never satisfied with that number on the scale, because
mhm,
you're not actually doing that internal work, the soul work that is
mhm,
necessary in order to go with that weight loss, to really see that true transformation, if you will, or the empowerment. I know those can be sometimes like buzzwords and some people don't like them, but really I love the transformation aspect, because you were this one person and now you are in a journey to that higher self, or that next, or that new self, that you're
mhm,
working or practicing. um, you're in the practice of creating.
mhm. Totally. And I think that's I think you nailed that with the weight loss or the number on the scale and the soul work, the inner work alongside it because and I think as I was first practicing, I was kind of shy with the soul work. I think that's also why meaning like to bring that into like such a topic that was like nutrition and health like I was a little tentative. Um, and part of also with like connected and courageous was like that's why I was such like I wanted to share that with other women too. Like, no, own those things because the things that we often think like, oh wait, that's gonna sound weird, or like maybe I'm a little weird, like those are the things for the right people when it's with the right people that they're gonna love and it's gonna be so effective. So, anyways, what I'm saying here is that when I started to, I tried to not talk about that and like, okay, let's talk about food and well, are you eating protein? Like all this stuff. And like it helps, right? But like even if these clients were seeing physical results, it's something about it was still not satisfactory, right? Like, or it wasn't satisfying rather. So that's why, like now, if I'm working with a client who sure might want to come and their pain point is like, I want to lose weight. And then, of course, we explore that deeper. It's always deeper. Um, Tactically and like nutritionally and like on the front end, like we're doing things that, promote good health and, healthy, sustainable weight loss. However, I will never ethically not incorporate the soul work from the get-go. If not, more often than not, depending on the person, we're more focused on that heavy in the beginning before we do even like the protein talk and any of the nutrition education because it really goes to show after years of working with women and men too, like anyone, it's hand in hand. So like it's like the scenario of like you can be 10 pounds, you say it's, oh, I just need to lose 10 pounds or I just need to be a size whatever. But if you are not happy, people really don't, it doesn't matter. Like you can be
Right.
10 pounds lighter and still be like, I want to be another 10 pounds lighter or whatever.
Right.
But when we incorporate the soul work, we're able to enjoy like when we arrive, quote unquote, at like that 10-pound weight loss or whatever. And or more often than not, we end up realizing like, well, shit, like it doesn't even really matter about the number, which I know that's what, your theme has been lately. It's really just the inner, right? And I think you and I are both kind of similar in the sense where like, we're not denying anyone. We understand the sentiment. Like physically, you want to feel good. Like, and
Right.
just because you're doing soul work and softer inner work does not mean that you and I aren't over here rooting our clients on and being like, no, like we're physically doing the things too. We're
Right.
doing both. And
Yeah.
also though, do the soul work too. Because
Yeah.
the physical work, it's like getting rich, right? Like if you're not happy at the end of the day, you could be a millionaire, but I don't know about you, but like if I have $1 million and dead inside, that
Yeah.
like I guess it's cool, but it's not deeply
Yeah.
satisfying. I don't know.
Right.
Sorry, that was a
Right.
lot.
No. Oh, no. So it's a lot of really good stuff, is what it is. So this is like, okay. So as you were talking, Michelle, I was literally thinking, and this was really my shift. I had like this, I mean, like I knew that this was happening, like when I did a lot of like, outpatient counseling in a diabetes clinic. I mean, just when I did a lot of counseling in general with patients, at that time, patients, clients now. And I just found that there was so much more that we needed to talk about than have a palm size serving of protein, right? Like that. Cool.
Mhm.
We need that education. We need that information because maybe it is a first step. Maybe it is that first step of you saying like, I'm ready and willing to take care of myself. And maybe that is like our first window that's open that we can start
Mhm.
having that conversation. But then I was looking back in my own journey because oftentimes we support clients that are very similar to us, right? Like in
Yep.
our journeys. And I realized that when I was personally restricting, binging, cleansing, dieting, all the things, every single time I started a new one, it was because of something emotionally that happened to me that I could not control. So
Mm.
I shared this on a previous podcast episode that the first time I did a candida cleanse was when I found out that my parents were divorcing. And I
Mm.
said, and the way that I controlled that situation and my emotions was through food.
Mm.
And like looking back, there were so many different opportunities where that happened. Going to Weight Watchers for the first time with my mom when I was like 11 or 12. That
Mm.
situation was because of something emotionally that happened in our family and we needed to control it, right? Like, so
Mm.
I always like to, I don't want to turn a blind eye to something that could be impacting my client at a much bigger level from getting them the success or the results that they want, right? Like, so I think that that's our job as practitioners to, if we are aware of that and we don't talk about that, I feel like that's neglect of the client, because it's really
Mhm.
impacting them. And there has
Agree.
to be this like space, this courageous space to be able to have these conversations that oftentimes in society we don't have that opportunity, or it is like weird or like too much or too deep or
Well, it's also like as practitioners and dietitians, we're trained like and I would say a lot of healthcare is to be clinical, to be more and I again, you know me with like my masculine feminine words, but I guess all I want to say with that is like what we're talking about, I'd like to say is like the feelings and the deeper, the unseen that really has an impact. We, like many clinicians and practitioners in our professional academia way of doing things, doesn't always like allow for that. And I think a lot of people, myself at one point too, maybe like nervous to go there or just like you don't
sure.
want to, but really like that's the shit. That's the human shit. That's where the change to actually get the serving of protein, like to actually follow through with the tactical things. Like I found over the years, you gotta like meet the humans at the human emotional part to allow for them to follow through with the very straightforward nutrition things that often just because they're straightforward, they tend to be easy because of there's these other things happening underneath.
Yeah.
So I hear you and I think that I completely agree with that sentiment of like it's almost neglectful. And that's when I just started saying, you know what, screw it. Like I'm still gonna give you the tactical things, but I'm not gonna, I part of how I practice sometimes I ask permission may I share? Can we explore that? And, 9 out of 10 times everyone's like, yes. And then I'm just like, I'm going there, of
Yeah.
course, within reason, there's a time
Right.
and a place for like a therapist. But I do want to share one thing, because I think you said it, if you don't mind, like how you said when in your clinical experience, when you started to notice like it's more, I just was going to say, like, with the emotional eating, can I share with you like when I realized like, oh, like how the soul stuff started creeping in?
Sure.
So similar thing of like working at a primary care office, and it was like same things of like, eating, blah, blah, blah. And then when you're hearing these people like, eat the, like, whatever, I started, when you say like the emotional piece, and this is under, I consider all that under like the soul nourishment stuff of like, when we start to diet because if something happens emotionally, whether we lose control or a life event that upsets us, basically our emotions are affected. Um, and I feel like that's what I first called alternatives to eating or something. So again, we're human beings. So it's really easy for people to be like, oh, well, I just want a meal plan. Just tell me what to eat. But you don't, I always say this, you're not a rat in a study, right? You're not, that's why it's like people talk about like Nutrisystem or something. And it's like, okay, sure, they're giving you everything, but like you are a livable creature where like things happen, emotions happen, or whatever. So a key skill to be successful with nourishing yourself is essentially emotional regulation is what it is. And I think dietitians kind of like fall into that, or like when we counsel on nutrition, that's where that overlap with therapists are, because like you said, so many of us want to turn to like a diet, a cleanse, Weight Watchers, like do something extreme, when in reality, the answer or the better solution tends to be like something else to regulate our emotions, be it like regulation or to bring us joy for someone
Mhm.
who's eating out of boredom or whatever.
Mhm.
So I feel like that was also a key for me. I was like, like this seems to be the bottleneck for almost every human that I'm working with. It's not
Mhm.
that they don't know what a serving of protein looks like. Sometimes that is, but that's usually a very easy fix. Like,
Right.
hey, pair your carbs with your protein, get in a routine that works where you can prep your food or whatever. But
Yeah.
really, I feel like the stuff you need to get in, like we probably find ourselves getting into, is like the emotional regulation, the soul nourishment, the inner work. You still not eating carbs, even though we've told you, we've tried to educate you 1,600 times on it, because diet culture tells us not to. If we eat a carb, we're immediately ashamed because we have these deep conditioning from our mom when we were a kid.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I just felt like sharing that. I feel like that's where like it's just glaringly in like the nutrition world. And that's why, for anyone listening, you and I and many dietitians don't want to just give you a meal plan, because we care about you. We want you to, like you said earlier, transform, to be empowered. It is not
Yeah.
satisfying to watch your client lose 20 pounds, then to A, either gain it back and then some, and or B, develop some kind of
Eating
disempowered
disorder.
relationship with food and or eating disorder. Like, that is why
Mhm.
we're not giving you meal plans. Not
Yeah.
because we don't want to help you. We want to help you deeply, which is why we're not giving you meal plans. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want your money, right? Like, I mean, like, I
yeah.
don't want your money in the traditional sense of, here is the Band-Aid and just go do that, right? Like, I know nothing about you. I haven't taken the chance, like, I haven't taken any time to get to know you. I have no information, but here, this is the solution for you. Like, that is mind-blowing to me that we're literally spending so much money on, and I'm air quoting, solutions that literally know nothing about us.
Hmm.
And so it takes a little bit more, it takes time, because we're actually getting to know you as a person. And when you were speaking, Michelle, I was thinking like that bridge between like spirituality and science, because I love science, right? Like you and I, we could nerd
Hmm.
out on the science,
Totally.
arena, and just look at the case studies and, all these things, which is necessary, right? Like we want to know the physiology and the biology of the human body, because that's what we're working with. And also there's the spirituality, there's an emotionality, there's the mentality. of a
Mhm.
person that we are working with when we are truly supporting them in their wellness journey. That I think for the first time, well, not for the, I mean, it's been around, but I think more and more we're starting to talk about that because we saw such impact during COVID. Like there were
100%.
so many things that changed. And I think we were really rattled during
Mhm.
this experience. It's like, what's real? What's not real? How do I navigate this? Like everything about my
Mhm.
routine has changed. We're in isolation, and that brings about so many other like mental and emotional aspects. And now,
Mhm.
what do we do after this
Mhm.
awakening, if you will? Because a lot of people have shared like they just aren't the same person that they were 2.5 years ago. They've, experienced different things. Some of them are in, different relationships. They don't have the same friend group. They don't want to do the same social thing. I mean, so many different things have changed since 2020. So, what does it
Mhm.
look like then for the person to start building their wellness routine when
Mhm.
there's now this like knowing, right? And I think
Mhm.
that that's where it can be great to have the outlet to have those conversations.
Totally. I think collectively, as much as it shook everyone up for, similar things and then different things, I totally think that what it did was help bridge that gap, help open the conversation. And I really think Gen Z has to do with that too. I know that's like a whole nother, thing, but like I think that mental health has kind of caught a wave. And I think, I'm making a bold statement here, generalization, but I also think Gen Z has really helped with that in a way too. Just it's like more forthcoming. They're more comfortable with that conversation. And also, yes, I think the pandemic did something to us where we had, like the science and the spirituality, like two separate things. And again, our society tries to find certainty in everything. So for a while, we were finding it in science, and then that even was questionable because you and I both know science is just what we know now is the best thing based on, but it doesn't mean it's not evolving. But anyways, so
Mhm.
I think that, a benefit was that, like you said, it's at least allowing that conversation of, oh, wait, there is mental health, there is spirituality. And not saying that those are one and the same, but I think mental health fits more in that camp if we had to stratify it than the science, because it really wasn't a conversation in health before as much as
Mhm.
it is now. So I think it's really cool. I don't even know if you asked me a question. I was just kind of responding to I was just kind of saying like, yes, I see that. And I think hopefully and I think I'm seeing this, I wonder if you are too, with like clients and potential clients who want to change their health, they're also addressing that they don't just need, I know some of them are, like we're saying, like people are like meal plans, but I think it's awakening people in the sense of like, oh, wait, it's not just about the physical health, or it's not just this. Like, I think I need something more. The last couple clients I've onboarded, same theme has like, I think it's more, I realize I'm struggling than more than just like, it's not just the food. And I think even though you and I might have known that before about health and nutrition, I think what happened with COVID made a lot of more people awaken. And I think the conversations had helped people wake up to that a little bit more, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So I think it's
Yeah.
ultimately a positive thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, I so agree. And I think that there's more individuals that are saying, like, I don't want to go down this route anymore. Like I've gone down this route of the meal plans or, the quick fixes or the restrictive calorie diets so many times. And it's really not enjoyable and it never gets me to the results that I'm looking for. And so that's where I say like, okay, if it's working, then like, yeah, let's keep going with it. But if we go back into the science aspect, all of the data shows that this is not working. So why would we go back to it when, over 95% of all diets fail, the restrictive diets, a lot of them are 800 to 1200 calories. They don't work for adult women. There's a lot more. I like to pull in data on this of like, if it was really working, then why do we see a rise in obesity rates? Why do we see a rise in diabetes rates? Why do we see a rise in high blood pressure, right? Like if all these these things were working, all of those indicators would be going down. So we it's our opportunity to say, hmm, like that's really not working. So what
Mhm.
could work for you? And
Mhm.
that's where it really is a very individualized, personalized journey, because it looks different for every single person. Like you mentioned, there is some structure to it, right? Like there is some structure of, as much as possible, sound nourishment, as
Mhm.
much as possible, getting movement in, sleep, stress management. Like there are some tenets of this equation that work for each person, but how it's actually implemented and what that looks like for you is going to be completely different than, say, your best friend, your neighbor, your mom, your daughter, right? Like all of these things are going to be different. And it's okay to acknowledge that. It's okay to acknowledge that you need something different than the person next to you.
Right. And I 100% that you like, it's the statement I like to always share with my clients that I got from my therapist that was so freeing, which is, we think about what's best, right? And we might be raised by well meaning parents who are like, this is what's best. It's almost turns into dogma though. And society wants to say what's best for us, especially for women, right? Like, this is what's best. And same thing with nutrition, right? It's like, but what's best for me? What's best for me right now? And I love that. Like that was something my therapist helped me with. And I think that I don't know about you, but like that is just so freeing because it gives you the permission to be like, okay, that might be best for Sally, but is that best for me? Not what's because guess what? Generally, what like the thing like there's only very few universal laws is what I like to call that's best for all of us, right? Like water is good for us, right? But even so, we can get like nitty gritty about it. Like if you have CHF or a kidney problem, like it might
Right.
not be 2 liters
Right.
a day might not be best for you. But anyways, so one, what's best for you, giving yourself that permission. And also I was going to say, also, I think what this all is happening, because you're saying, oh, it's working and maybe it's working for you, but is it really? I think Jana too, for so long, like before this like pandemic, like pre-pandemic and whatever you want to call that era. I think before we were measuring our success of quote unquote what's working, especially in the nutrition world, and we still do, like people still do with like the metrics of physical, scale, like tactical. Okay, well, I fit into my dress and like yada yada. Where what has happened, I think pre-pandemic or post-pandemic, and just more opening because people want to start feeling good. They don't just want to like say it's working, but their mental health is in the shitter, their emotional, you know what I'm saying? So now I think more and more people are waking up like, wait a minute, what's my definition of works? Because is my definition of it's working for me just that I'm a certain weight and that I've been good all week? Like, what the fuck does that even mean? Pardon if this
Yeah.
isn't
No,
explicit. But like
you're
I,
good.
I think mental
Yeah.
health is because again, it's that intangible, like we don't always we don't value it until we see that suicide, until we see, and then it's like everyone
Mhm.
wants to attend the walk, but no one wants to actually value the things that prevent the suicide. Or you know what I'm saying?
Uh,
Sorry, I hope that wasn't like a
uh,
trigger, but like I think
mhm.
now more people are saying part of the definition of what works for me with nutrition or anything work-life balance or a career that I love, we're allowing mental health on the table. We're allowing our soul on the table. So now the diet or the nutrition approach isn't just about, oh, well, I lost 10 pounds. And you know what? Frankly, Jana, if someone came to me and says, well, I don't care about anything else, I just want to lose 10 pounds, I would say, get that meal plan. Well, first of all, I would try to have a conversation, but I would say, that's not for me. No, but really,
Right.
it's like that. I think more people are valuing though, like the redefining what works and valuing their mental health, their emotional health. And I love that. Like, I think that's
Yeah.
great. You could still value the physical. We want to be well. We want to, take care of our physical vessels. And also we want to take care of our mental health too. I think that's really important.
Oh, Michelle, this is
I got heated.
so, so good. So I'm just going to share a little bit about my story because, I think
Yeah.
we connect with stories, and I think
Mhm.
it's so powerful for us to know that we're not alone, that other people are experiencing this. And as of late, I've been on this exploration of what integrity means for my life.
And so essentially, like there's so many different definitions of integrity, but the way that I perceive it is, do your words align with your actions? And I, a couple of months ago, was struggling with panic attacks and anxiety, just heightened for so many different reasons. And it was because of the schedule that I was keeping, and how I was just very surface level taking care of myself. I would go to the gym, I would eat the healthy food, but I wasn't making the time to actually get adequate sleep. I wasn't making the time to connect with friends. I wasn't making the time to just sit down and like not do anything. And I was like, why am I still having anxiety? Why am I still having anxiety? Like all this stuff. And I realized that I say I value peace, and my actions say nothing of that, right? Like
Mm,
peace would require me to act differently. And so I've done this I've literally taken all these different areas of my life, and I've said, like, where am I in alignment and where am I not in alignment? So this is what I say I want, and this is what I say I value. And are my actions actually allowing that to happen? And I got to tell you, there were so many areas where I was not in alignment. And then I was wondering why I was having anxiety attacks.
mm,
Anxiety is telling us something, and it's
mm,
usually telling us where we're out of alignment for ourselves.
mhm,
And as I have gone and done this, this homework, if you will, the more I bring into alignment, the less I have anxiety.
mm,
I have not had a panic attack since then. Now maybe it will happen again. Like, I don't know. I've struggled with anxiety for quite a while. Um,
mhm,
but it's all showing me that this was not for me. And I think that, like, I'll just say, like, that was hard because some of the things that I was doing, I was like, no, I need to prove myself. This is how it's done. Like, I need to show people, right? Like, it was very ego driven.
mhm,
And now it's like, but they don't even care. Like,
mhm,
these people really, it doesn't even care. Like, the people that truly care about you, like, are really not looking for you to do all these things. Um,
mhm. They're not
and
looking
like,
for you to kill yourself over it, like,
right, they
break your
actually want
back
to be
like
with
that.
you. Yeah,
Mhm,
so I highly recommend like this integrity exercise. Like, really, I wrote
mm,
integrity up top, and I said, where am I in alignment? Where am I not in alignment based on what I say I want and my core values?
mm. I
And
literally love that. I'm writing it down.
yeah, it's so powerful. Like, it's hard because it's hard. We have to get honest with ourselves. And
Mhm,
I think that's part of the work that we also allow women to do, is like, you really just get honest with yourself. And sometimes you're like, dang, I don't want to see that. And sometimes you're like, wow, that is me. And we get to celebrate that. And that can be a lot harder than following that meal plan.
mm,
So I'm sharing
totally.
this because I think it goes into that whole aspect of, you could be doing all these things, but are they actually getting you the results that you're looking for? Or are they
Mhm,
continuing to make you spiral
mhm,
and, feel like you're not enough, feel like you're not worthy, feel like you're always anxious? Like, these are core things that we have to address and find ways to better align so that you know for yourself that, yes, you are worthy. Yes, you do matter. Yes, you can have peace and calm. Um,
mhm.
and then it changes everything.
Hey everyone, it's Jana, and I wanted to interrupt your content real quick to tell you about something that I've been using every single day, Owen Protein Drink. I've been using it for the last year now and absolutely love this product. It's been something that's been so helpful to meet my protein needs, to meet my calorie needs, and to meet my overall nutrition and performance goals. I am super picky when it comes to recommending different products or supplements because I take a whole foods based approach. So I highly encourage you to check this out for yourself, see if you like it. I do have a discount code for you. You can click the link in the show notes below. At checkout, you can put Jana M20 to get 20% off and check it out for yourself. Now back to the episode.
Mhm. Yeah, because essentially a diet, I think what people forget, and like they might not even consciously be thinking it, but a diet, even your weight, your appearance, like none of that is going to solve the deeper things, which are your sense of self-worth, your, whatever, like thinking I'm worthy enough, thinking I'm good enough, um, giving you peace, they might come kind of as a result of those things. However, the diet alone, or like just like those solutions by themselves aren't going to satisfy like the deeper like need, if you will, if that makes it. Like I think that's what I feel like so many of us are trying to say. Like you might feel better when you start eating better, taking care of yourself, of course, and that kind of exudes and illuminates that feeling of worthiness. That's great. And also, you're not worthy because you are on a diet. You're not worthy because you lost 10 pounds or because you exercise. Like, and I think that's where a lot of people get stuck in that loop, that can even actually like perpetuate the cycle of like, oh, well, I fell off, so I'm gonna, do whatever I want, or just like eat whatever I want, drink whatever I want. And then like, again, like you kind of have to start over to get your worth back or whatever. I don't know. I think there's like some layers there, but
I will say that is one of the reasons why I encourage women not to weigh themselves very often, if at all, just depending on where they are, is because it continues to connect you to, if you lost weight, then you are good. Versus if we can, gently pull that back a little, and you can give that to yourself of, I'm taking care of myself and I'm feeling good. You can give that to yourself versus the scale triggering that for you. And when you have those correlations and they start changing, where the scale isn't the one that's predicate, like it's not doing the job for you. Basically, you are doing the job for yourself. It makes it a lot easier to continue on the journey, because you know what it feels like without having to see those numbers, and vice versa. Like if you step on the scale and it goes up half a pound, that has a bigger, sometimes mental impact on someone than all the other things that they've been doing for the last 2 weeks. And so it's a way that we really broaden the ability to give you, celebration and define your successes far beyond that number on the scale.
Totally. And opposite, it goes like, if it's going down, you might give yourself that false sense of praise, like too much, and wonder, like thinking like that's all that matters, like glorifying just this number, and losing kind of sight of what really matters, which are the things you can control and the actions. But no, I totally agree. And I think that's scary for someone to hear, Jana. Like, I don't know. I wonder for your listeners too, like, or even your clients, like if you've run into like the scale surrender, how do you, I don't want to say convince someone. I know we were just talking about that earlier before we jumped out. We're not convincing people, but like, how do you, I guess, propose that of like, hey, trust me on this, like stay off, or like, I'm just curious, because I'm sure some people are like, what? But like the scale is telling me if I'm on track or not, or like what have you.
Yeah. I will say it takes some time, because ultimately we have to build trust. Like my job is to build trust in the relationship, and vice versa, right? Like I'm building trust with them, they're building trust with me, so that we can have these more difficult conversations. And a lot of times it comes down to when we start doing that assessment of what's working and what's not working. And when we notice that, say, every time a woman gets on the scale, she feels horrible about herself, even if the scale went down. So I've had this happen so many times, where a woman that I'm working with, she lost like a pound for the week, and it still wasn't good enough. She said, several of them have said, I was expecting that I would lose a lot more. And that's really that right there highlights for us as practitioners how unhealthy our connection with weight loss is. Because healthy weight loss is anywhere between a half a pound to max 2 pounds for the week. I mean, anything over that, we're likely restricting or over exercising, or we're doing something else that's probably
not
not
losing
healthy.
fat. Mm-hmm.
Exactly, exactly. And so while you may want that, that does not mean that that's actually healthy for you in this journey. And so, one, it gives us an indication where we need to continue to do the work, right? And two, it when we're asking ourselves what's working, what's not working, and when the client, are able to identify that they feel worse after they get on the scale, it's an indication that it's not working. So
Mm-hmm.
how can we recreate that? Is it, instead of weighing yourself every day, do we go every 3 days? Or instead of weighing yourself once a week, do we go every 2 weeks, right? Like, so we start pushing it back more and more. So we start convincing themselves that they can actually have success and not have to have that level of frequency with getting on the scale. So it's really,
Mm-hmm.
we're working with the mind, right? Like, we're always working with the mind, but it's also the deconditioning to say, like, we are deconditioning to a new normal, and then we are starting to build you up in that healthy way to where, yeah, it's still part of the equation, but it's not the entirety of the equation. And this is a big one, it's not determining how you care for yourself for the day. So I've also seen this where women will get up, their morning routine is to go right to the scale after they go pee or poop, right? After
Mm-hmm.
they get rid of waste, essentially, because then they'll weigh less, get on the scale, and that scale will essentially tell them how they're going to function for the day. Are they going to feel good or bad? Are they going to eat or not eat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That, yeah, so that's, again, that's an indication that something externally from yourself is in control. And what
Mm-hmm.
we really want to do is we want to move that to that internal locus of control so
Of
that
course.
you know how to nourish your body even outside of that number on the scale.
Totally. I love that. Exactly. I feel like I would say the similar thing in the sense of like connecting first and foremost, because like with, you know, their sentiment, like we get it. Like that is what we're conditioned. Like if the scale has so much control over us. And part of the work, ironically, maybe to them is like, we don't really give a shit about the scale for the most part, right? Like, it's just that one tool, it's one piece of the puzzle, but we don't give as much of a crap about it as most people are conditioned to believe that it actually has to do with your journey to success with your physical health and your nutrition. Yeah, it's an indicator, but when we're working on hashtag food freedom, hashtag self-trust, connection to your body, all that stuff, like the scale is actually the last thing in many cases that we want to work on. So it is a lot of that deconditioning. I totally agree. And I think too, Jana, like, I don't know if you found this, but like, I found like even simply like that brief education of like, the healthy weight loss, like a half a pound to 2 pounds, like that actually is what is like, and sometimes I say, well, would you prefer to lose fat or would you prefer to lose muscle and fat, a mix of muscle and fat, which is less sustainable, which isn't really ultimately healthy. And then like, again, most people have that logical mind. We're like, oh, well, like, no, I would like, that doesn't make sense. Like, of course I want to lose fat. So, I'm here, like, I'll take the slower route, quote unquote. But no, I think it's just so interesting how like that is such a huge piece of it. And I also feel the reason why I also don't promote, I don't really care about the scale. Usually how my clients work, it's like 3 months later, they're like, oh yeah, by the way, I lost like 10, 15 pounds or like whatever, because they haven't, stepped on the scale. Some do. And we work like that, like what you said. Because it's hard to break away. Like some people aren't going to be like, oh no, I feel safe to just like break away.
Right.
But I think what most people I feel like should understand, and you brought this up, and like anyone listening, like think about this. Like this is what I tell my clients, like whatever the scale says, ultimately, like I don't like 99.9% of the time, probably 100% of the time, isn't going to change what we need you to do. Like, you know what I mean? Like the actions that we
Yeah.
need you to take that we've talked about and that we're working on and working towards. So I don't really care, even if the scale is going in the right, like it's not going to like magically change that 1 week. Like, oh, well, you're a half a pound down or you're a half a pound up. That's not going to change the GP. Like that's not going to change the game plan. So why would we throw in a risk factor of like, oh shoot, like now I'm battling my own more demons in my head that you already have that might alter you doing the things that you still need to do. I don't know if that, so that's kind of also how I phrase
Right.
it to my clients too. It's like, either way, like even if the scale is going in the way that you want, like yippee which is like you and I both know, like 1 week isn't really indicative of anything. It doesn't change like what you still need to keep doing. So why would you
Exactly.
risk that? I don't know.
Ugh,
We're already working with like those hard thoughts. We don't need to add more fuel to the
yeah,
fire.
so true. Because as you were talking, Michelle, I was thinking like that actually runs a risk of basically impairing consistency, right? Like, so even if, so whether the scale goes up, like that could really be it really could be a triggering event of like, why does this even matter? You know, I've had to work so hard and the scale doesn't go anywhere. And then you stop. And,
Mm-hmm.
or if the scale goes down and you're super happy, then you stop because it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
I could probably eat a little bit more today, or, oh, you, right. Like you start tempting yourself, and, or it prevents your progress. And what we are trying to, you know, support women on is continuing with progression of
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what that scale. I mean, this is a big one for me, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I love teaching women and supporting women that it's okay to care for yourself regardless of what that number says, right? Like, so even if the scale went up a pound, it's still good for you to take care of nourishing your body, moving your body, setting boundaries, saying no, you know, really being able to connect with yourself. Like that scale's not going to sway how I think about these other things.
Of
And so it
course.
really allows us to expand out of like, okay, like that is one part of it. It's not the entirety of it. And I still get to progress with caring for myself.
Oh my gosh, of course. Like, and even if, the scale went up, like, does that mean that you punish yourself? Like, it just, yeah, like either way, the goal is always to take care of yourself. And very, very rarely is the answer like, oh, I need to eat less or something, or like be meaner to myself or restrict myself. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I also feel like in the week to week basis, like it's just not really a great indicator. Um, no, but the goal is always like, how do I sit on the same side of the table with myself? So if the scale goes
Mm.
up, if the scale goes down, like the answer is never abandon myself. And honestly, quite frankly, I'm going to bold enough say it here. Dieting is abandoning yourself. Dieting is actually opposite of healthy. So if you're going to sit here and tell me that you're like, no, Michelle, like I really want to get healthy, I'm going to go do a diet, I would say that that's probably one of the least healthy things you can do.
Oh, that should be your new tagline.
Dieting isn't
Dieting.
healthy or whatever I just said. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Dieting is not, or dieting is abandoning yourself.
it totally is. And I feel like we sometimes too, like that's why we also have to get clear on what we're looking for, because a lot of the times, I don't know, you've probably seen this, like sometimes depending on where people's emotional state is, like they don't care if it's not healthy. They just want to lose the weight because they think
Right.
that that's going to take away from the negative feeling. But really
Right.
now we're just creating even more like a bigger hole when we go on this dieting journey. I don't know. That could get messy, that whole conversation.
Well, yeah.
But
And I can't remember if we talked about this before we started recording or as we started recording, but that goes into like what I call like the weight loss disguise, right? Like, what is it trying to disguise or
totally.
hide that you really just need to say and that you need to be supported on? And you know, like again, like this isn't for everyone, certainly, like there are like, but this is for a lot of people, right? Like this is for a lot of
Hmm.
people, especially if you feel like you have struggled with weight your entire life. If you feel that way, this is probably for you. Or if you find that you have tried every diet out there and it just doesn't work, this is probably for you. Or if you like constantly say that you are selfish when you do something for yourself, God forbid, this is probably for you. Like these are like, if you feel these ways, or if you have said these things, or if you have heard other women say these things, then this approach is probably going to be really helpful because it's going to expand it out and you actually get to dive really deep into some things that are probably truly impacting you.
Totally. And I think it also, the last thing I'll say about this is that it's not just like it's not just the soul work. It's like what we talked about earlier. Like I feel like for anyone listening, like I think I could speak for both of us. Like you and I aren't denying that like there is like often like a lack of like knowledge when it comes to what actually healthy eating is or like how to take care of yourself. So I just feel like sometimes in our society, and I know I'm guilty of it too, like we can think all or nothing where like, oh, if it's just the soul work or if it's just this stuff, but like I really don't know like how to eat without dieting. It's just, I guess I would encourage people on your healthy eating. We're not saying like don't focus on food, like just only focus on like what the dieting is disguised. We're saying it's like both though. Like if you go into that other end that post pandemic has opened for us of like that spiritual or like getting more in touch with yourself, that's going to make the physical and nutritional changes a lot more easier is what I always find. So like, we're not saying like the answer is just do the soul work and go eat hamburgers every day. Like, you know, or like, just don't care. We're saying like, if you keep running into issues or like you're not happy, like there's a really good chance that there's something like you say is in the weight loss, you going to weight loss is disguising. So can you integrate looking at that alongside your health journey? Because once you do, I feel like your self-worth is more intact. You're like, hey, wait, I actually kind of like myself. I know my self-worth. I don't want to take this shitty ass shameful approach to improving my health. And then you start to get wiser. And then you start to say, wait, is that even like, I have some chick screaming at me saying, follow the meal plan or like work for your margarita girl at I feel like you start to like question things more that before you had your self-worth intact, you would do because you're like, okay, yes, because you're chasing not just quote unquote improving your health or dieting in disguise, you're also don't have your self-worth intact. So you're using that as a way to fulfill it. So you're like, oh, I'll just starve myself on canned tuna because not only is it health, I don't know, someone used to do that in high school, just thought of that, but like, it's also like, I'm trying to find my self-worth in this diet. So when you have your self-worth intact and you're working on the inner stuff, you're wiser about how you treat yourself physically. And now you can say, okay, I'll eat the carbs because like my self-worth and carbs don't have anything to do with each other. Like, I don't know. But anyways, so do the work on both ends, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, there's no need to continue to hide, right? Like it's okay to have these true conversations. Because I'm going to go on a tangent on this, but like even like socially, right? Like I have found that a lot of women bond through talking about the diet that they're on or the foods that they're not eating or, oh, that's bad for you. Or, you know, like it's like this bonding, especially around like the holidays or the New Year's of like, oh, I can eat this because I'm going to start my diet come the new year. Or, you know, like it's just, there's all this conversation that's around like dieting versus like around, well, how's work been for you? Or how are you truly doing? Or like, how are the kids? Like, I mean, like having these like true conversations with other women versus like, oh yeah, I only eat 50 grams of carbs a day and nothing more. Or, you know, like it's so,
Oh my God.
it's so superficial for me that I refuse to be a part of it. Like,
I agree.
I'm just
no,
like,
100%.
I would rather
and stop. Why do we normalize that? Why do we, I mean, I feel like I don't hear that too much in my close circles. Cause like people know me, not that they're saying that because of me, but I just feel like, but it's like, but I definitely still hear it in close circles. And it's like, why are we talking about this? Like, why are we normalizing like your diet? First of all, it's like my follow-up is that are you really happy? Like, what's really going on? Like, I see that you're really intense. I have a friend who gets like this every once in a while, and my inner like barometer goes off a little bit and thinks, like, I wonder what, like you said before, emotionally, it's a way to control and like it's a response. So I don't always verbalize that to this friend, but I definitely always think it like, what is this person trying to like gain control over? And it's always after a vacation. It's always after something that this person is like, oh yeah, I started XYZ. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I wonder how you can find balance throughout, because your life is busy, that we don't always have to keep like starting over and doing something drastic. But anyways, yeah, those conversations are like, let's have like better speaking of mental health, like instead of harping on that, what about asking like, how are you really doing? Or what's bringing you joy lately? What's your soul nourishment been like? Like I always like to kind of ask people that, like, oh, I want ideas, whether I do or not, just to check in.
Yeah. I think that's so funny. Like, I will always, like, if someone asks or whatever, I will say, like, I'm off the clock. I have no opinion about it. Like, I just don't.
Can I say that on my next date? That's the worst. It's like, oh my God. You know what I say on dates? I work with eating disorders. It's really like therapy. And like, I just totally shut down like the keto and like any of that. Cause guys, especially, I mean, anyone, but I feel like, I don't know, like guys are like, oh, like my fitness routine. And I'm just like, no, I don't even care about fitness. Really.
Yes. I will say on a date, I was asked to write a meal plan and I thought, how dare you? No, thanks. I'm good.
I think, and it's so hard for us because I feel like you and I work on our avoidanceness sometimes, but like my sisters pointed out, they're like, Michelle, and my best friend is like, I think though, like sometimes like they really don't know, like they're trying to like have a conversation. I'm like, well, I hate it. Don't ask me about don't ask me about food on dating.
It's hard, but I mean, maybe that's something like going into the holiday season, like what would that look like to have deeper conversations and like truly connect with individuals, particularly women around you outside of the food, or like, oh, I feel so fat, or I feel so gross, I eat too much, or, like what would those higher level conversations look like?
Yeah.
That'd be a good one to.
The last thing I'll say, I have to say in our family, it's helpful that my sister had such a beautiful little niece, or a baby that's my niece, and she's like 13 or 14 months or whatever. And my sister is very hypervigilant. Like, so like even just for anyone who moms out there or aunts or like who you're around, like little ones, or even teenagers or even early 20s or just regular freaking like adults like us, like if not for yourself, be mindful for others. Cause my sister Nicole, like sometimes my mom is a little crazy. She knows that she tracks her food. It's a whole other conversation. And Nicole is like, Mom, like you are not allowed to like say comments, like old comments, like you would make, like, because we're super mindful of, like the baby and just like, so sometimes that could keep you accountable. So think about it. Like if you're a mom, an aunt, whoever, an uncle, even like, pay attention to who's listening. Not only is it not good for you, like also not to mention, but like the little ones around you.
Oh my gosh.
That's who they're learning it from. Like we all have our stories of who scarred us at the family events when it comes to. So don't be that aunt.
That is so true. Oh my gosh, Michelle, that's so true. Because my niece is 5 now and she just started school and she's already starting with the comparison. And so her and I had this conversation because I was so hungry the other day and I just like ate, and she's like, Auntie, you ate a lot. And I was like, I know, I am so hungry. I have to stay strong. And she's like, yeah, you do. And then at the next meal, she said the same thing because she was hungry and she ate. And I asked her, or I think my mom asked her, she was like, Jack, you were hungry. She's like, I know, I have to stay strong. And so it's just not like, it's not shaming your hunger, right? Like it's eating for what you truly are hungry for within, like, I mean, I always say this isn't within reason. Like, I mean, she is a 5-year-old and very intuitive with eating, right? Like she has not been skewed any which way at this time. And to tune into that and be able to support that in a fun way is cool to see.
Totally. I love it. And that's literally what it is. They're like absorbing everything. Like 2
Yeah.
seconds later, they're repeating you. I got to watch my mouth because next thing I know, she'll be saying, she'll be saying F mom. Right
Well,
now, it's just
Michelle,
hi.
yeah. Well, I love this conversation. You know that I could talk with you for hours as we have before.
Yes.
And I just so thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise and willingness to expand the conversation around women's health and our bodies and how we take care of our bodies. So thank you so much.
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day today to tune in. If you love today's content, leave me a review letting me know exactly what you liked best, and remember to share my podcast with others to join the Nourish You community. If you want more great content like this between episodes, I encourage you to join my mailing list. You can click the link below in the show notes or check out my website at www.healthwins.org, and let's stay in touch. Until next time, I'm Jana. Talk soon.